A legendary weekend in the Lou. PGA Tour champions compete in the Stifel Charity Classic, presented by Compliance Solutions, September 4th through 7th, and COAR. Perform live with your Friday ticket. Visit StifelCharityClassic.com today.
And welcome into the Cards Central postgame show. The Birds getting it done in game one against the Rockies at Busch Stadium. Donnie, once again, as the headline says, Brendan "BLEEPIN" Donovan. Pinch hit heroics for the Birds. And we're going to get to a lot to break down, but that was clearly the biggest play of the game to put the Birds on top by one, and a lot to break down with the pitching as well. Mikolas with a great outing, and a couple other positives for the Cardinals taking this first one against the struggling Colorado team right here in St. Louis. I'm Sara Dayley alongside Brendan Schaeffer. Thank you for joining us. And Brendan, what are your thoughts on this? Donnie to the rescue, as Jeremy Hodge says in the comments.
Yeah, he put it right. That was the kind of game that if we're really going to start to let ourselves believe, if we're really going to start to let ourselves think that this Cardinals team has a run in them after the Dodgers series win, the Cubs series win, those are two good playoff teams, but you cannot then turn around and lose a series to the Rockies. Really, they ought to be sweeping this series at home against the Rockies, but you can't sweep if you don't win the first one. Mikolas was more than good enough to get you a win tonight. Runners in scoring position was an issue for the Cardinals until it wasn't, and Brendan Donovan coming off the bench making the big swing happen. That is one of the most timely swings of the Cardinals season. Hey, we'll see. We've got time to talk about what it will or will not turn into. But that would have just been a shame of a game to lose, and Donnie made sure it didn't happen, along with Kyle Leahy coming in and doing a nice job out of the Cardinal bullpen.
Yeah, once again, Leahy giving the offense a chance, keeping some of the action for the Birds down low, but also Sajasi with his 3-hit night. So that was coming on strong for the Cards. Again, if you're just joining us real quick, they outscored the Rockies 3-2, powered by some late inning offense. Mikolas numbers 6 2/3 of an inning, just 4 hits, 2 runs, none of which were earned, by the way, 1 walk and 3 strikeouts, keeping the Birds in position to win this one.
Yeah, it's so funny, like the way that Mikolas oscillates back and forth between, I think in my tweet I said infinite doom, and then he'll come have a game where you are pretty convinced for a while he's going to throw a no-hitter, and obviously ended up giving up a hit and a couple of runs. Not really his fault. We'll talk about some of the defense behind him, but he pitched really well. And look, largely this season, Mikolas has pitched well at Busch Stadium. The home run splits have been very pronounced for him. But he was good tonight and sharp, and it's just, you wonder what happens sometimes when he goes on the road and it doesn't look nearly as sharp. But as much as it's been a roller coaster season and really kind of an up and down roller coaster contract for Mikolas, this was the type of game that we knew he could give you, and he provided it tonight to keep the Cardinals rolling once they got the offense behind him. I just think about the number of Mikolas starts that he's had over his career that have been pretty good, and he hasn't gotten the run support. It was really veering in that direction tonight until Donovan made it happen. It would have been a shame, but all's well that ends well for the Cardinals.
Yeah, and of course, we can't forget how it really got started, because Burleson's early RBI did give a little bit of a spark, right? It was just a 1-run lead, but that 2-out single in the third really proved the go-ahead score, and otherwise would have been a really, really close game. So we have to kind of back up to the very beginning and see what got the Cards going.
Yeah, I mean, that was a run they needed, but it wasn't going to be enough to hold up after the 2-1 deficit. That would have been the shame of it. It's just, for a while, 1-0, you felt like that might have been the final score. There wasn't enough offense in the middle innings. If you bridge the gap between Burleson to Donovan, there were opportunities there that go by the wayside. The ill-fated bunts at bat for Victor Scott, where they end up getting the out at home plate. But that came into play because the Cardinals weren't getting it done in the clutch situations. And so you felt like you're trying to make something happen, force the defense to make a play. It doesn't end up working out. You want to see more consistency, but Dollander, the starter for Colorado, is a young, talented arm. And, kind of making his way in his career at this point, but he's a guy that has some good stuff, and you're going to run into that sometimes. You just can't necessarily have it be that way too many more times in this series, because you'd like to be able to let your pitching staff have a bit of a breather type of night rather than Mikolas and Leahy having to go just wire to wire in a close contested game where, one mistake could end up being the difference. You'd like to be able to have the offense get one of these next two and let the pitching sort of be able to take its leisure. But yeah, they had to win by whatever means they could tonight. And ultimately that ended up being, late inning heroics if the shoe fits, and the Cardinals were able to wear it that way.
And Victor Scott III with his 30 and 31st stolen base of the year. Again, his speed and his potential heads up base running by the Birds in a couple of situations. Granted, didn't get him across the plate when it came to balls to the bat, but some good moves base running wise and keeping an eye on where the ball was in play.
Yeah, fundamentals. I mean, those are sort of the things that the Cardinals are going to need to probably win in, right? On the margins, do the little things right. And at least from a base running standpoint, you see them able to largely get that done. And of course, when you've got speed available to you like Victor Scott II, you would love to see that in motion as much as possible. And, the bunt thing is something that is in his bag and just wasn't quite what they were looking for from him tonight. But you like to see it. I will say on the other side of the ball, though, the part of the fundamentals that's going to need to probably be brushed up on a bit defensively, and Nolan Gorman at third base, it was something that we kind of knew coming in was a topic of conversation with some of his recent play over there. But 2 errors in one game. He's got a strong arm, but it's not been an accurate enough arm. And I really have been an advocate to say, like, Nolan Gorman needs to play every day at third base, because that's what's available to the Cardinals while Nolan Arenado was out. And frankly, they need to get a handle on what Nolan Gorman's bat is going to be for them. And we've seen some good things from him at the bat. I'm not convinced that he is a tenable third baseman for this organization moving forward. I think they like Donovan's defense better when he's in the lineup at second base, but I would almost consider just kind of punting on the whole thing and putting Donnie over at third and having Gorman play more second, because I just think and look, if they decide, hey, this is runway, this is going to manifest as runway for Gorman defensively, and we're going to continue to see what that looks like, so be it. But as the Cardinals creep up in the standings, if this continues, they've been on a nice run this past week, I think you would maybe start to consider what's the way that we can try to win the most games. And even if that's just a minor tweak to the defense, is that something that you consider? Ninth inning, it was very clear what Oliver Marmol felt about it. Gets Sajacy over there at third base, Gorman out of the game, Donovan moves to second, and they had Garrett Hampson playing center, which ended up working out well. He made a nice catch out there in the ninth.
Yes, and there was a comment, Taylor Garrison, he said Newt is made out of glass and paper mache. Like you said, yeah, it was
that
it
ball
was
off the
rough.
kneecap I was watching that going, and you knew he was gonna stay in the game. It was gonna tighten up on him, and then he was gonna leave the game later. That's just the way these always go.
Yeah, the instant comment was, that's going to leave a mark. I mean, that, just that stinger right in that weak spot. There's really no padding there. And so I'm sure there'll be a nice bruise, and hopefully it's not anything more than that, and just out for a little tightness and get some treatment on that. A couple of other comments. We need to sweep the Rockies. Yes, I think that's a no-brainer right there. And that is from Moon the Me, I guess is how you're going to pronounce that, all as one. Some of these names I really don't want to get too into because some of them are pretty creative. Taylor Garrison, I like him, Newt Bar, but he's hurt more than any ball player I've ever seen. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's really, he's had his fair share, but I kind of feel like at this point, the Cardinals have had quite a few injuries across the board, and it hasn't been just one specific player that's been tallied the most.
Yeah, like Newt Bar's been injured over the years, probably more than his fair share, but am I going to look at a play like today and say, oh my gosh, it's a product of Newt Bar not being physically tough or capable or anything like that? No, he fell the ball off his knee. It was a freak play, which it seems like the freak plays will find Newt more often than maybe others. I don't know how you quantify that, but I can't look at that and say, the human body, when you foul off 95 or whatever off the inside of your knee, is probably going to have a bruise and it's going to swell up and you're probably going to be out of the lineup tomorrow. That's not specific to Newt Bar. That's just a freak play that, if he ends up on the injured list, you can kind of look at it and say, oh man, there's another one that gets Lars Newt Bar. But specific to today's injury, if we're calling it an injury to Newt Bar, that's, I don't know how I can use that and put it in the category of glass and paper mache, because again, I think if any one of us fouled that pitch off the way that he did, that would probably hurt the next day. So it's a freak play. Yes, it happens, and we have to try to find a way to quantify injuries in the way that we talk about Newpar, because the best kind of ability is availability, and sometimes he's not available. But today was not anything that I can really put on him. It's not like, for some guys you say, oh, they're always going to have soft tissue injuries. It's going to be a hammy, it's going to be a strain of calf, whatever. That's not what happened here. He fouled the ball off his knee. It happens.
Yeah, and 100%. Going back to Mikolas real quick, I did write down something to kind of look at. But despite pitching nearly into the seventh or complete seventh, he kept his pitch count pretty under control. And that we haven't seen that, like you said, too much. On the road, he's had his highs and lows and things like that. But he had some weak contact tonight rather than really chase out a bunch of strikeouts, only 3 6 2/3. And I believe it was, 1 walk. I mean, that's a pretty controlling factor for him that we haven't seen too often.
Well, I mean, when he's at his best, you're going to see Mikolas pitch to contact, but it's been sporadic that he's been at his best. But yeah, tonight was a very good version of him. And again, I hate to even pin what happened there in the 7th inning too much on him, because it started out that could have been an infield hit. It was ruled a single and then an E5 that advanced the runner to second, which is why, by the way, both of the runs are earned against Mikolas, because they say based on the way the rest of the inning went, that run would have scored anyway. But I think we could make a case that it certainly could have gone differently with the butterfly effect. You'd have no idea what exactly would have played out. But yeah, his efficiency is one of the reasons that when Mikolas was really in his prime with the Cardinals, it's probably one of the reasons they gave him that next contract, honestly, because he was churning out 200 inning seasons all the time. That was what made him good, because he could be able to get through 6, 7, sometimes more on a minimal pitch count, because he's not one of those guys chasing strikeouts. His problem at times has been almost too efficient. I remember the storyline like coming into the year was, in the past you've thrown too many strikes because that's too many hittable pitches. When you're in an advantageous count, 0-2, you got to stop throwing a meatball. 0-2, you got to be able to pick at the corners a little bit. And so that was sort of a topic coming in. I don't know how consistently he has been able to do that, but certainly tonight I feel like it was a good blend of attacking the zone, but don't be hittable where you end up giving up some hard contact. He was able to kind of toe that line, I think, effectively tonight.
We had a couple of comments about Victor Scott leading off. Also, Nick Jensen saying here just recently, why don't Donovan and Gorman switch spots? I have no problem with Gorman at second. Donovan can play anywhere and play well at that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering too. And like JC, where he fits into all this, because of course Donovan wasn't in your lineup tonight. And so you can't really compare it for what it would have been in the starting lineup. But I think you definitely could make the case that, and obviously, again, with how it went in the final inning, once they put their best defense out there, what happened? So JC moved from second to third, and Gorman was out because Donovan had come in. So what does that tell you? Even if it's JC and Gorman in your lineup, if you have Donovan not playing infield for a day, at a certain point you go, hey, we don't need to force this with Nolan Gorman. We're not going to try to make him into more than what he is defensively. We can evaluate it. And it's not been a super big sample size, but originally they shifted him from third base to second because Arenado was here and in his prime. But I think we get to a point where that shift may have had to happen anyway. I just don't think that Gorman is the third baseman defensively that the Cardinals are going to need him to be. And I don't think he's not a great second baseman either, but I think he can be serviceable there. And so JC seems to be able to pick it pretty well and make the right play, make the right throw. He's not maybe exceptional, like Nolan Arenado is exceptional defensively. But I think JC can do a nice enough job at third to where if all he's making out tonight's exact lineup again, knowing what he saw tonight, does he just switch Gorman and JC? I would venture that he might, because you didn't know if you were going to have Donnie for a full game. The fact that he was able to pinch hit obviously ended up playing pretty big into the finale of this game. But you're not probably going to have to make that decision moving forward because Donovan's going to generally be in your lineup. Will they shift Donnie to third, though, knowing that Donovan has had not injuries per se, but like nicks and cuts here and there? And like, are they going to extend him now coming off the groin in a way that's a little bit unfamiliar? Or would they say, hey, the most familiar thing for him would be to keep him at second base, so Gorman would continue to get that run? Or does it, if that's the case, squeeze Gorman for playing time? Because they look at JC and he is starting to pick it up a little bit at the plate. Had a 3-hit day tonight, playing better defense than Gorman. The Cardinals are trimming that gap in the wild card standings. I I can tell you, if the Cardinals are going to continue to make their way toward this wild card cut line, you'll see more Sajaci than Gorman down the stretch, because I just think Oliver Marmol is finding more trust in what that looks like at third base. Now, if Arenado comes back, it's pretty easy. Unfortunately for Gorman, your bat maybe plays, but your defense doesn't right now, and that's going to have to be an interesting conversation for sure.
And that was discussed tonight in the broadcast. They were talking about Sajaci getting more at bats. He's working on his two strike hitting. Clearly, that's hard to do. And he had, I think they said 35 or so and 100 plus at bat strikeouts. So that's where his room for improvement needs to come. But it looks like he's settling in a little bit better, like you said. He's starting to show some improvements, and it's slow mechanical gains that he's showing. So what are you going to, at this point, it's like if he's going to keep going the rest of the year and improving his numbers, and that's a positive thing. But you've got to get his Walker, his bats. You've got to there's a lot of guys to rotate that you keep talking about. So for Ollie, that's some big things to do, and to make sure that, everyone gets their time in.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy. We've talked a lot about the corner outfield spots where Burleson has established himself in the minds of, the coaching staff as a guy that's going to play every day. And that's not me like disagreeing. I'm just like setting the record that that's kind of what has been said by Oliver Marmol. We know Herrera's going to play as well. His numbers offensively has started to creep down in the other direction, but still for the year, the highest OPS on the team. And so with those two guys, and Herrera mixes into left field on occasion, he's mostly going to DH. But when Arenado comes back, does that become a squeeze on Gorman? Because then he doesn't have DH available to him unless you put Herrera in the outfield from time to time. We've seen more Lars Nootbaar in center field recently than we had previously. But that squeezes out Victor Scott II, who you mentioned his, stolen base ability. He's gonna set a recent record of Cardinal stolen bases. I don't think that we have seen anybody go 40 in a while in Cardinal history. So he's got that ability, and he's doing it from the 9-hole. I know that was something else you brought up from the chat, Sarah, where people kind of wondering, would you put Victor in the leadoff spot with the stolen base ability that he brings? He's really worked on plate approach to be a guy that takes his walks when that's what the pitching gives him. And he's a guy that if he walks, it's a double, because he's able to get to second so easily. So that is something that I've kind of said more in recent episodes that I would consider, especially as Donnie was struggling in his starting role. Now, Donnie has the big hit, and you're not going to want to see fewer at-bats from him. But I do kind of wonder about that, as like, do the Cardinals just need something that maybe not totally based in the stats, where you go, well, what's the on-base percentage for Victor Scott? Because that's a fair question when you're talking about moving a guy to leadoff. But do they need like a devil magic thing? Because they're starting to get vibes back, and you say, hey, this is something that can put pressure on the opposition. If you're not feeling like Donnie is 100%, and certainly right now we don't feel like Nootbaar is, even if he's healthy, his performance is not such that he's got to bat, in the top 5 of your lineup necessarily. Would that be a shakeup that you consider? You could bump Donnie to 5, Nootbaar to 7, with Victor Scott II batting first, and your righties kind of slot there in between Herrera, Contreras, etc. Arenado comes back, he's down in the bottom of your order, but suddenly that feels like a pretty complete lineup that can do some things for you offensively. And obviously, we talk about Arenado's offense, and the power just has declined. You're hoping when he comes back, the shoulder is strengthened up and maybe he gets some power back. But I've never questioned his defense. Arenado's defense would be a difference maker. And if by the time he comes back, you're still in the wild card mix, well, yeah, we're not questioning that anymore. You bet Arenado 8th if you have to, but you need his third base defense out there too.
And we haven't talked about Contreras at all, but there's been a couple of comments and discussion. Donovan saying that he needs to swing the bat. He's taking fastballs right down the middle. And the next comment, Contreras has also been quick-tempered lately as far as patience at the plate. But not much really seen production-wise out of Contreras as of late, as much as we have seen earlier in the season and right out after the All-Star break. So what are your thoughts on Contreras right now?
I don't really have any new thoughts on him. I don't agree with any like overreaction to what we see in one given game. He's a guy that runs hot for sure. But it's because of how much he cares and how much he wants to compete and win at the highest level. Trying to comb real quickly some of his game logs recently, like, okay, so an 0-fer and then had an 0-fer last night, but he did walk today. But the first 2 games of the Cubs series, he was getting hits and taking his walks, getting on base 4 times. So, no, I think Wilson Contreras, like, we can't just look every time a guy goes 0-for twice in a row and say, oh, my gosh, what's going on with him? Like, Contreras is going to end up with the highest OPS on the team. Pretty sure that that's going to be the case. I expect Herrera to kind of creep back down. He'll finish around 809. and Wilson will be 8-10. Wilson's still everything that he was packaged to be as a hitter coming into your lineup, and so I still feel pretty good about where he is offensively and in leadership, and everything about Wilson Contreras certainly is just fine by my book.
And Chewy questioning thoughts about putting Gorman at DH. Bernie said that he's done the best there, and maybe left field Herrera, even though we have a jam in the outfield.
I don't know if Gorman, and like I'd have to really look, and this is what Oliver Marmol and his staff have to do as well, is really ascertain like what's the biggest benefit to the offense. And to Gorman's credit, like as much as the defense has not been there, offensively, he's really been doing a nice job. And the fact that he's taking more of his walks recently, he'll still have those games where he strikes out in bunches. But like you look at his recent game logs, it's littered with really solid outings. Outside of really one game on the 6th of August, he was 0 for 3 with 3 Ks. He's been on base every other game in the last 10. So, like, from that standpoint, you're getting what you asked for from Gorman. You want to see him get at bats. You want him to get that runway to find out what does it look like when he plays every day. And that 0 for 3 with 3 Ks isn't the thing that takes him out of the lineup for a week. What do you then get from Nolan Gorman? And the answer so far has been pretty good production. To the point that Chewy is mentioning from Bernie is like, you know, if you don't want to hide him at third base and you're trying to play Donovan at second to keep him from getting injured or wearing down. The question was in the chat. I won't be able to pull it up, but it was asking why was he out today? He's been dealing with a groin, and today was like maybe they wanted to buy him one more day, but he was available in case they needed him, clearly, and he was able to come in and be the hero in this one. So, like, generally, DH is the best spot for Gorman, but it's also the best spot for Herrera. Frankly, it's the best spot for Burleson, but he's playing outfield every single day and has gotten better at it. I'm not trying to rip Burley defensively. That's something that he has taken extremely serious. And guys like Oliver Marmol have been pretty blunt in the way that they have talked about it after the fact and said, I think it was on KMOX last week where Ollie basically said, Burley came in and was out of shape and we told him so. And he took a lot of pride in like getting himself physically to a place where he could be a force for you every day in the outfield. And that's what he's been able to do. But like, you can't DH everybody is my point. And so if it's going to be Gorman, that means, all right, let's walk through this. Herrera's going to play left and play it frequently. Is he a worse defender for your lineup in a net status than what Gorman is in the infield? Maybe not. Maybe that's just one of those things where you say the infielders are going to impact more plays and the errors are going to show up even more pronounced. So you can get away with Herrera in left. Where does Nootbaar go? Maybe Nootbaar's hurt. Maybe the foul ball tonight means he needs a few days, and so that is something they roll with. But yeah, there are a lot of names, and there are 9 spots every single day, and so trying to find the way to get all that to fit is not easy. And by the way, it does sound like Nolan Arenado is strengthening, working to get back as quickly as he can. Which when he went on the IL, I was skeptical of whether that would be the case. That does seem to be the case. He's down in Florida. Doing that process and seeing it through right now. So when he comes back, I think the Cardinal lineup is better, but I also think you have a more pronounced squeeze for the players that we're talking about who are not going to be getting that consistent time.
Yeah, those at-bats are definitely going to be key. But nothing beats relaxing on a hot summer day and watching baseball. And the simplest way to get into the action is to download the Pick 6 app from DraftKings. It's really, really simple. Just pick more or less on the stats for 2 or more of your favorite players, and boom, you're in the mix for big cash prizes. Pick 6 is available right here in Missouri, so don't miss out on the fun. Don't settle for smaller payouts. Switch to Pick 6, and right now, new customers can get $25 in bonus picks with their first deposit of just $5.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
So a couple of comments too, tackling the Yankees. We have the win tonight against Colorado, 2 more at home, off day Thursday. The Yanks are in town for 3 Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then we head to Miami and Tampa Bay. So do you think we can take one from the Yankees? Some are saying they're terrible right now and that we could definitely do it. And that would definitely put us in a decent position if we continue to rack up a couple of wins here the way we have been this last 2 series.
Yeah, I feel like the Yankees will probably come into Busch Stadium feeling a little bit better about themselves than they have recently. Looking back at some of their recent games, the Yankees had dropped series to the Astros. They dropped a series to the Rangers. They were swept by the Marlins before that. And so it had been a good 9-10 days or so since the Yankees were feeling good. Now they're playing the Twins, though, and the Twins are terrible. And so they got a win over Minnesota today. We'll see if the Twins can steal one or two from the Yankees to just kind of keep them at level ground. I think the Cardinals have to sweep this series just because it is the Rockies and they are historically bad, and it feels very doable after you were able to kind of steal the first one. You know, you earned it because Mikolas pitched so well, but then it felt like your defense had helped you cough it up, and now it becomes a steal territory when you're in the bottom of the eighth and you need a run to be able to get back in the game. And Donovan comes through. So they stole the first one. Now that should give them a little bit of confidence. And of course, momentum is only as good as your next day's starting pitcher. But they were able to win a series over two playoff teams in a row, the Dodgers and the Cubs, coming into this. And so it felt like, all right, are you going to have that letdown game? Like if you were going to have one, it felt like it was certainly going to be tonight. And with Mikolas on the mound, you know, you weren't sure what you were going to get from him. Tomorrow's interesting. Matthew Liberatore is your starter. Now that he's been one of your better guys this season, but recently he's struggled. They're facing a lefty, but not a good one. Kyle Freeland has a 5.5 ERA. And then Wednesday is another lefty, Austin Gomber. He's been even worse, 6.5 ERA. So I get it that it's the weird lefty voodoo that it seems like the Cardinals aren't able to solve. Although coming off that Cubs series, they beat Matthew Boyd and they were able to win the Shota Imanaga game as well. It's not like they performed incredibly on offense in those games, but they won the games. And so I feel like, you know, if you're looking for some of that vibes magic, beating a couple of lefties the next couple of days would be good.
Yeah.
As you get forward into the Yankees series, you're going to have to continue to sustain the way that they've been playing. But it'll be very exciting if they go in as a team that just swept the Rockies, because then you'll be able to look back and say, well, they've won, 7 of their past 9, and they'll be game and a half out of wild card or whatever it is. Everybody is going to be continuing to scoreboard watch teams like the Cincinnati Reds, who already lost today. I believe the Mets are idle today, so you're not.
Yeah, they're off
and they're
gaining, playing Atlanta.
Yeah. So you gain a half a game on them. I guess that puts you 3 back as of this moment of the Mets, and you'll be hoping for some help from the Braves before New York will be facing the Mariners, who are pretty hot right now over the weekend. So, I think it's just about finding a moment in time right now, because I think it'll be well attended at Busch Stadium against New York over the weekend when the Yankees come to town. But you could kind of already imagine, all right, what if they can handle their business against the Rockies, they get that sweep, and then suddenly people are talking again. It's like, hey, the Yankees are in town. And hey, you walk off on the Yankees or you do something special like you did tonight, but you do it against that team. Suddenly momentum starts to be that snowball rolling down the hill. Anything can happen. And you can't say, I know we've had so many times throughout the season where we're like, if they don't win this game, I'm done with it. You know what I mean? Like, that's really hard to stick to your guns.
Yeah.
You can't possibly do that 162 times. It's just not, like, if it's the NFL and you make that kind of claim, all right, maybe that'll work. College football, sure. But in baseball, there have been some brutal wins, some brutal losses, but there's also been wins like tonight where you go, that wasn't so bad. Hey, that was actually kind of fun. The Cardinals have got to stay right where they are and just beat this little league team, because the Rockies are just, and it's not to say they don't have some nice players, but they are not a collection of players that has formed a very good team this year. And so you've got to continue to keep the pedal down these next 2 days before you can start thinking about the weekend and the Yankees.
And I do think, I know we've called them the comeback cards, but I do think that is very fitting, because there's been so many times where it's just been up and down and up and down. You, like you said, you get that chase effect where people start talking, they get some national coverage, it gets some attention, and they tank, and then it turns around. We have injuries. As Brenden says here, this young Cards team has me locked in the rest of the way. I agree. I mean, I definitely think they're starting to be a little more fun to watch. They're starting to come off some of the major injuries. I mean, a lot of guys were out kind of that pre-All-Star break, coming back strong. And I think it's fun to watch. But then again, I really was just hoping at some point they would turn a little bit and not continue to go downhill the rest of the season. That's what they're doing. They're still hanging in there. So I think that makes it even more enjoyable and more fun to watch, to see really what they're going to do. You can't turn the page on them yet. And that's what's the fun part is.
Yeah, it's not just, young guys doing it. Like Miles Mikolas was really good tonight, and he's not going to be that every time, but he was this time. And so you take it where you get it. And it is a little bit clunky because you go, well, we're talking about the young team. We're talking about how it's got a young core and it's growing together. But then every fifth day you're watching Miles Mikolas pitch and you're trying to square that circle. But I don't know. I think people are more inclined to just kind of be along for the ride when things are going like this. And that's why I say you can almost picture it already if they can just find a way to get rid of the Rockies and do what you're supposed to do against them. And you feel the Yankees coming into town. Like, it will be palpable. You'll get that off day Thursday, and then you can feel what that weekend might be like. This past weekend at Busch was electric. There are a lot of Cubs fans there, but it was that type of environment that really gets you excited about baseball again. And you have a real chance to not only have that again this coming weekend, but have it in some meaningful baseball games that, it wouldn't be possible. We couldn't be here if we couldn't say thank you to the Mets, because the Mets kind of coming back to earth in a major way. I mean, they've lost 9 of 10. That is really the only thing that is keeping this a conversation, because this comment is 90 wins back on. Not really, but it may not take 90 to be able to do it, while Samuel is ready to apologize to Mo. So it's early to say it's going to be a miracle, but it's not early to say, like, hey, you can be tuning in every night going, hey, can they win another one? Because this hasn't been a streak, but it's been consistency. You've gotten 2 out of 3 against a world champion caliber team, 2 out of 3 against the Cubs. What's it going to be against the Rockies? How are you going to finish up this series? I'm excited to see Matthew Liberatore pitch tomorrow night, because it feels like, if you can't get up for this game, knowing that the Cardinals are like trying to will themselves back into this thing, when are you going to be able to give your best foot? So that's what I'm looking for, the best foot forward from Libby tomorrow.
I like Brian Quinn's comparison. He says, some people say comeback cards. Honestly, I prefer cardiac cards. They damn near give me a heart attack every time they play. And I feel like sometimes that's the first thing we say when we talk, Brenden, after we're waiting for the stream to start. It's like, man, I had to hold my breath there for a second, because it's like, is this where it's going to fall apart, or is this where they're actually going to do something and do what we know they can do? So I do think that is quite a creative comment there. Push and Daisy, should we start paying attention to the standings now? I know that's been the running joke this whole season.
Do what you want. Do what makes you happy. Like right now, I would tell you don't bother looking at the standings, because you're going to see some things that the Brewers are doing that are going to make you pretty unhappy. But for talking about the wild card, you can watch the Mets, you can watch the Reds, because it's kind of filtered down to just being that, right? Like it's not like there's this big, this big group of teams in front of the Cardinals between them and a wild card spot. It feels silly to be talking about the standings, but realistically, the Cardinals are a game behind the Reds, and they're 3 behind the Mets.
Yep.
I think that's right. Yeah, 4 in the loss column, but 3 overall.
Yeah,
Giants behind the Cardinals too. Yeah. So, right. I mean, you can look if you want, if it makes you happy.
And I feel like the less you pay attention, the better it just goes, right? Like if you're just not sitting there analyzing every single thing.
I would say wait till Friday to look, because if you keep winning, if you beat the Rockies, the standings are going to look even a little bit better. Adam wants to know who the arms are. I don't know. The starting rotation arms, like that's the thing that could cause the Cardinals to maybe fade back if they just don't get that consistency. But if they can get this version of Miles more often, that's a big if. But if they can get this more often from him, that's going to help you. They need more from Palante. Sonny's been they need a little more from him too, but he's been better of late. Libby's really the wild card in all this, because he was so good at the beginning of the season, but then I felt like he started to wear down a bit, and I don't know if they can do it without him. I don't know if they can do it kind of dragging him kicking and screaming every fifth day. He's going to need to go out there and be a bulldog for 6 or 7 for them. You do get the benefit tonight of having Miles go deep enough and having Ollie have the trust in, like Ollie's having to do things that he ordinarily wouldn't do. But when you trade the good half of your bullpen at the deadline, you have to be creative. He just let Kyle Leahy go off the sheet 2 1/3, and then boom, the rest of your bullpen is fresh. and he can really attack the next 2 days because he knows he's got another off day coming up Thursday. So that's to their benefit, but that's the kind of thing that does not happen if Ryan Helsley's still here, right? It kind of makes you wonder, like with bullpens and the way that the modern game is managed, a lot of times it's like guys kind of have their roles, and we would get comments in here all the time about, well, why don't they let so-and-so, you could pick your name. Well, Matt's looked pretty good. He'd gone 2 innings, but he looked good. Why didn't they let him go a 3rd inning? Because the next guy blew it. It's like, well, I mean, you got a full bullpen out there for a reason, but sometimes when a guy like Leahy is on, like he was tonight, he was probably the best option to pitch that 9th inning. And so they left him in there. I thought that was interesting. And the comment was made far earlier in the show, Sarah, but I did put a star by it. All he cooked tonight. I mean, say what you will, but he pulled the right levers, pressed the right buttons, and helped the Cardinals to a pretty big win. He should be able to sleep nice and easy tonight as the manager.
We also have the comment that leaving Leahy was an A+ call. So yeah, clearly there's been quite a few folks at the beginning, like you said, that were in total agreement with you. Brenden also mentions we don't have to look. September is so far ahead right now. I feel like it's August 11th. We still have a lot of baseball to play. But
so much time. You just had to get to that 3 games back kind of mark, because then it's like, okay, a lot of stuff can happen over a month and a half or more to get you back into the mix. 3 games is not an insurmountable deficit. But the number that I still maintain is more important than that one, because don't let your value as a team be dictated by what the Mets are doing, what the Reds are doing. Get to 5 games above 500 and stay there. And then get to 10 games above 500 and stay there. Win your games. I mean, that was the old Tony La Russa sort of mentality, is he would say at various points in the season, he'd rather know that they're 10 games above 500 than know that they're in first place, which might sound a little counterintuitive, but at the same time, it's like if this year's Cardinals team gets to 5 games over and 8 and 10, and then they stay there, I'm going to know that they're good enough to be able to do what they might have to do to catch a team down the stretch. At this point, I still need to see more. They're 2 games above 500. We could be here 2 days from now talking about a team that's right back down to 500 and going, what the hell happened? So you have to be able to win your games and do what you do. And then when we get into September, the standings can become more of a thing, but it also takes no time at all to Google it and go, hey, Cardinals are 3 back. That's kind of fun.
Yeah. And I think to his point, he was mentioning that September is going to be a little difficult. I mean, we have Seattle, the Brewers, Cincinnati. So that's going to be the time to turn on if you want to look at the standings versus, like you said, if we get 10 up, then we can worry about the September schedule. But it is a little bit harder than what the Cards have been dealing with the last couple of weeks. So.
Yep. And this comment from Dalton mentions that Libby breaking down. I don't know if it's quite that to that extent, but yeah, he's kind of faltered a bit where it's to the point of he's got the biggest workload we've seen from him as a major league starter. How does he grind through the dog days to be able to continue producing for this team? And you're right. You can't take him out of the rotation. It's not really an option unless you're convinced that he's going to get hurt if you don't. Like, that's the one thing, is they could decide to scale him back, or we've heard that he could consider piggybacking him with Leahy to give a little bit more of a cushion there for Liberatore. But what they need is Liberatore to be efficient like Miles was tonight and go give him 6+ tomorrow and be the guy that he was early in the season that the Cardinals couldn't ignore. In spring training, he was so good that they couldn't ignore him. They had to find a spot for him in that rotation. He's got that within him still. Physically, though, is he just wearing down to the point where it's going to be hard to channel that tomorrow? It's a conducive moment for it to happen because the Rockies don't have a great lineup, and so you might be able to do it even if it does feel like you're running on fumes a little bit right now.
Well, once again, we appreciate everyone joining us. The final score tonight was 3-2. The Birds take the first game of the series against the Colorado Rockies. Taylor Garrison, the closer the team gets, the more momentum we collect, the more the adrenaline is going to kick in. And yes, I think that's definitely agreeable in that situation. Like Brenden mentioned earlier, they start to get that little edge and that chip, and it starts to become fun ball again, and they start tallying some wins, and then everyone wants to pay attention to be right back at it. So that's definitely a positive, and the Cardinals do have that momentum they can put in the right direction.
Yeah, and then it's just going to be starting pitching. Like, even as they're winning games like tonight, 3-2, the offense didn't do enough, but it did it when it had to. You're not going to be able to hide from starting pitching that isn't up to par. So It's going to be probably largely on the guys you see. Like, I don't know that anybody's walking through that door. maybe Quinn Matthews just becomes so inevitable that they're like, screw it. When you get to the end of August, bring him up. I don't know that that's imminent, but I guess I could never say never with that. But it's that other than that, you're talking about Mikolas channeling what he did tonight and continuing it. You're talking about Palante finding it because it's been a tough go for him recently.
Yeah.
They can do those things in the rotation, get Libby back to where he's been in the past. Stranger things have happened, but again, they do have to take it one game at a time and focus on the Rockies before you can start chewing on the Yankees.
So once again, Cards Central post-game show. If you enjoyed the conversation and want to contribute more, you can like, subscribe, hang out, and do everything that we do here on Cards Central, also Cards 365, and all the other program that we have available. But first pitch tomorrow, 6:45. We'll be right back at the Cards post-game show tomorrow. You can join everything, like I said, a full schedule, packed house, everything coverage sports here in St. Louis. That's Brendan Schaeffer. I'm Sara Dayley. Have an amazing Monday night, and we'll see you here soon.